WisconsinEye's Campaign 2024 programming is sponsored by Wisconsin Counties Association, Nicolet National Bank, Wisconsin Hospital Association, Operating Engineers Local 139, the Wisconsin Realtors Association, the Wisconsin Laborers District Council, and North Central State's Regional Council of Carpenters. To support programs like this, please consider a tax-deductible donation at wiseye.org/donate or by texting WisEye to 44321.
Andrew Hysell from Prairie is the Democratic candidate in the 48th Assembly District. The election is November 5th. Andrew Hysell, welcome to WisconsinEye.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for participating in our candidate interviews. What is your campaign's key message? Why are you running for this office?
Well, I'm called to public service, and I am really focused on fighting to restore some of the things that have been taken away from the folks here in Wisconsin. We've fallen behind in education. We've fallen K-12 as well as higher education. The ability of workers to organize and to collectively bargain has been restricted. Our environment has suffered, and importantly, our rights, our individual liberties have been under attack, and we're seeing things that we never anticipated before at the federal level around the right to a safe and legal abortion is now no longer exists. And so these are things that I am dedicated to. I'm running for this seat because I'm dedicated to fighting for these issues.
If elected, what's an example of a bill that would be a priority for you to introduce?
Sure. A priority for me to introduce is a constitutional amendment to start the process to amend the state constitution to create a right to privacy. This would protect reproductive choices, the right to a safe and legal abortion. It would protect your right to marry who you love, whether it be interracial marriage or gay marriage. And it would protect the right to, other rights that we hold dear. Justice Kagan, the Supreme Court Justice, just spoke recently about the fact that the Dobbs decision, which rolled back a right to choose, threatens gay marriage and interracial marriage, those rights at the federal level. Here at the state level, we cannot waste any time, and we need to take proactive action right now to protect those rights. So this amendment would require two passage. It would need to be passed twice. So we cannot hesitate. We can't waste any time. We need to move forward right away.
If you're elected, you'd be entering the Assembly during a biennial budget year. The state's projected to have more than $3 billion surplus. What would be your top two priorities for use of that surplus funding?
Sure. That funding needs to be used to help meet the state's obligation to fully and equitably fund K-12 public education and also higher education in this state. These things have been they've been increasingly pushing these burdens on the local taxpayer. I've heard it at the door. Local taxpayers were facing these referendums, these initiatives across the state because local schools can't afford their operating costs because of this shift of funding from the state, this funding responsibility from the state to the local level. We should use those surplus dollars to support the state's commitment to K-12 and higher education.
So you mentioned those spending priorities. What about taxes, tax cuts, tax reform? Is that part of your platform?
Yes, we need to target tax reform for working families, target child care to make it more affordable. We need to provide tax credits and other sorts of assistance, and also for health care. With the increasing costs and with folks really struggling to have good benefits, we need to target reform to help people purchase insurance.
You mentioned K-12 education as a priority for you. It is a leading issue for many voters. What's going well in education and maybe what needs to change? Is there anything in addition to increased funding?
So I would say that what's going well is we have amazing teachers in this state. We have people that dedicate themselves and serve our communities as teachers, and they need to be supported. I would say, again, the state has for 30 years been pushing more and more of the funding burden for local schools onto localities. That needs to stop. The same thing for local governments. If we look at right now, what the city of Madison gets 18 cents for every dollar of state income and sales tax paid in Madison. How is that equitable? How is that fair? It would be a priority for me to fix that.
Higher education you also mentioned as a priority to invest in. What is the future of Wisconsin's four-year colleges, two-year colleges, technical colleges look like to you, and what should the legislature really focus on in that area?
Yeah, the UW system should be a priority. Our state, amongst other states, we're competing with other states whether we like it or not. In other states with university systems are glad when we don't invest in ours, because then they can beat us. They can recruit better students, they can get better faculty, they can have more better programs, and it generates business, it generates economic activity. We need to stop looking at UW as a liability and look at it as an asset.
What do you see as the state's largest workforce development challenge, and how would you propose to address it? Yeah,
we need people ready to work in jobs of the future. And I just want to say a great way to address it is right in front of us, which is labor unions. Steamfitters Local 601 in Madison has fully financed a state-of-the-art training center. They bring in journey people who do a 2-year program. They get paid while they're learning how to use computers, math, all these other really technical aspects that are required for modern day construction projects. And they exit with no debt. And they're ready to go. And they can earn 6 figures. And this does not require a government program. It doesn't require anything from the taxpayer. We need to strengthen the trades. We need to bring back public sector unions as well to really help workers, because unions do 3 things that we're constantly struggling with. They provide good paying jobs, they provide adequate benefits like healthcare, and they provide a secure retirement. And what's so great about them is they're a private sector solution. So let's get government out of this and get the private sector, give workers the ability to organize and to work as a group in order to address these issues that for some reason politicians for the past 20 years have struggled with.
A few more workforce questions for you. Investments in public and energy infrastructure grow our state's economy. This also provides an opportunity to invest in our state's workforce, but currently there are no requirements for hiring local workers. Would you support a state resident hiring requirement for state, local, and utility scale infrastructure investments?
I would, and I would also do it within the constraints of the federal constitution. There's a Commerce Clause restriction on states discriminating against people from other states. So there is a way around that. It's called a market participant exception. And so as long as we can draft it properly so that it's in compliance with the federal Commerce Clause, absolutely would support that. It grows our state, it grows our economy.
Employee classification is an issue in the construction industry. Some employers misclassify workers as independent contractors or pay them in cash off the books. This lowers costs by avoiding payroll taxes and unemployment insurance, and it puts compliant companies at a disadvantage when bidding on projects. Plus, misclassified workers may be denied minimum wage protections or overtime pay. Are you aware of this issue, and what do you think should be done about it?
I'm very aware of this issue. As an attorney, I work with labor unions. It's basically shifting the costs from the employer onto the taxpayer. So I support strongly enforcing existing law, which prohibits this practice, so that workers get their fair share of benefits and pay, and instead of shifting that onto the taxpayer, really where it does not belong.
Affordable rental housing is an issue in Wisconsin. Some support government-imposed rent control to maintain affordability, while others argue keeping rent artificially low will decrease rental supply, resulting in increased prices. What is your sense of housing as an issue, and which best addresses rental housing affordability, rent control or building more rentals?
I think it's a really complex issue that's very significant and serious to people in my district, and I would say we need to approach it as a serious issue that it is and look at a number of different options. I would consider focusing on trying to make apartments more affordable through grants and through working with private developers to build more affordable housing. I think in the end, that's the only real way to address this, because we are somewhat of a victim of our success in that we're having so much economic growth. We're bringing more workers to Madison. We need to do more to make housing affordable.
Medical systems are facing numerous headwinds in the form of inflation, workforce development, and issues around Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement, resulting in fewer services and even the closure of a hospital system in western Wisconsin. What would you do to preserve access to care and prevent future closures?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, we're only one of 10 states that has not accepted the Medicaid expansion money, and we need to accept that money right away. In rural areas, in states where they haven't accepted the money, like ours, the uninsured rate is like much higher. As a result, hospitals are not getting paid when people come in. They're also not going in for preventative treatment, which is much less expensive and more effective. So we need to accept the Medicaid money, and we need to stop this political game that we're playing right now with that.
What about mental health care? It's a growing concern for Wisconsinites, also a concern for state and county budgets. What are you hearing on mental health care in your district, and do you have any thoughts on how to address it?
Sure. Community-based health approach is the best way to deal with mental health care. If you have people working in the communities, identifying people at risk and then connecting them with services, it's very effective. The Wisconsin Department of Veteran Affairs has a program called the Veteran Outreach and Recovery Program. They hire people around the state that live in very remote communities, and they work. They'll go to local gas stations. They'll identify veterans who are suffering from mental illness issues, alcohol, substance abuse problems, and then they'll refer them to programs. It's really effective, and other states are actually looking at VORP here in Wisconsin to seek to replicate it.
Would you expand that program in Wisconsin?
I would expand that program and also expand it to people who aren't veterans.
What about abortion policy? How should Wisconsin move forward on the issue of abortion? You mentioned that as a priority.
Yeah, I want to start the amendment process right away. I don't know why we're waiting. We shouldn't wait. We should assume hope for the best, assume the worst. So let's get this going. I would say we need to roll back the mid-1849 abortion ban. We also need to recognize that our state constitution was amended in the 2000s to prohibit gay marriage. So we need to get moving on this right now. And I would just say that Roe v. Wade was a consensus decision. It was a consensus decision that was considered moderate. It was the law of the land for over 50 years. And I think that pretty much sums it up.
Transportation. What are the pressing transportation needs in your district, and how important is it that these needs are addressed and for the state to keep on schedule with the reconstruction of aging interstates and significant corridors of commerce? Sure,
yeah. I met a civil engineer at the door. Public investments, public infrastructure creates so many benefits, you cannot even calculate them. And we need to, focus on our highways. We need to focus on mass transit. I'm super proud of Sun Prairie and Paul Esser for creating bus service from Sun Prairie all the way into Madison. We do need regional transportation hubs. It's something that the mayor of Madison supports. I think it makes sense because of the communities around Madison. We need to bring mass transit options to the forefront, and we also can't forget bikes and pedestrians. We need to have lots of different options for people to reduce traffic and also improve the environmental outcomes of some of our transportation options.
Speaking of the environment, PFAS and other water contaminants are a concern for a growing number of Wisconsinites. And do you see this as an important issue, and what are the solutions?
Yeah, we definitely need to address these things. It's really scary when you start to see microplastics and PFAS and they're in your body. And I don't smoke cigarettes. I jog every day. I eat healthy food. Well, guess what? These things are all affecting us, and they're not getting better without intervention. And so I support DNR, I support efforts at the state level to regulate these things and to do it quickly and effectively.
We are to our final two questions. How would you describe the leading differences between you and your opponent?
I would say that I will be a leader on protecting our individual rights, our right to vote, our right to marry who we love, our right to our own reproductive health care choices. My opponent will not be that. Secondly, my opponent, if she's elected, will fall in line with Robin Vos. She'll have to. And we've seen what Robin Vos has done for the state, and we need something different.
Finally, let's say you're elected this fall and you get this magic wand you can use in the state capitol to resolve one issue that brings all parties together. What is the issue?
An issue that brings all parties together, wave a magic wand. I really honestly feel that Medicaid expansion, there's many Republicans that support it. They represent many rural districts. They have hospitals in their communities. Their residents aren't insured. I believe a lot of the rank and file Republicans support Medicaid expansion. It's It's the leadership that's prevented it from happening. If I could wave a magic wand, we would be able to come together in a consensus and get those dollars that we're paying to D.C. back home here to Wisconsin.
Well, thank you, Andrew Hysell from Sun Prairie, the Democratic candidate for the 48th Assembly District. The election is November 5th. Andrew Hysell, thank you for talking with WisconsinEye.
Thank you.
This programming is brought to you by our generous sponsors. Thank you for watching.